See this book in my hands? It's around 40,000 words, 22 chapters, one story in these unassuming pages. It has taken me approximately 4 hours to read in one sitting. Yes, I absolutely am that kind of nerd. But in those 4 hours, I've experienced more of the world than I could have in 4 years. There's a quiet revolution that unfolds daily when a reader sits alone with a book. On park benches, under fading lamps, in a classroom with the comfort of the blankets. It begins with the turn of a page or the glow of an e-reader screen. Reading isn't just something I do, it is how I interact with the world, how I connect with humanity, and how I understand the very essence of being alive. For me, reading has been a lifelong companion. Books have been my refuge, my teacher, my rebellion, and my restoration. As a young person, books have opened the doors to infinity for me. I want you to feel that too. I want the entire world to love reading as much as I do. When I was younger, my parents will tell you that I'd carry this novel or any novel anywhere, between classes, in the car, even to family gatherings. It was both the cause of their pride and mild annoyance. I would sit in a corner and vividly hallucinate for hours on end while staring at what is essentially a dead tree. And this, for some reason, was the topic of everyone's conversations about me from the beginning. She reads, so she will be intelligent. She's going to be a doctor. When she grows up, she's going to get a 99 ATAR. Of course, then, I had no clue what an ATAR was or why everyone was so obsessed with my future, when all I wanted to do was find out whether Harry Potter won the Goblet of Fire. By the way, he did. Now, however, with age bringing wisdom and exhaustion and the burden of growth, I realized that the only reason I am surviving high school is because I have always read. I have absorbed information and knowledge that has built the foundations for all of my learning to come. What started as an escape has become the most essential tool in my armory of life skills, an armory that is now being compromised. Consider, for a moment, the intellectual landscape of previous generations. My grandparents, for instance, navigated a world that operated at a fundamentally different pace. Their leisure, their education, and their very engagement with life was linked to the printed world. They devoured books over days and weeks, allowing the narratives to unfurl with intricate detail, building complex worlds and characters in their minds. They engaged with newspapers and journal articles, not just for the headlines, but for deep, lengthy, researched articles and editorials. They dissected arguments and formed nuanced opinions. This intellectual engagement was the very cornerstone of their mental agility, their critical thinking skills, and their remarkable capacity for empathy. They read to stimulate their brains to create a rich inner life, to understand the diverse tapestry of human experience. The progression of humanity, in many ways, has always been propelled by the quiet, dedicated act of reading. After all, humans are the world's only storytellers. Stories are ancient. They are how we have always made sense of the world, from the cave paintings to the Quran, the Torah to the Bible. Stories have always been humanity's heartbeat. They pass down values, they shape memory, they preserve identity. Consider this, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, changed the world through recited verses, stories filled with moral challenges, examples, parables, warnings, and hope. The Greeks gave us tragic epics and heroic myths like that of Icarus. Hindu scriptures hold stories within stories, exploring fate and nested narratives. The Bible's parables still guide millions. Indigenous cultures across the globe have passed on stories orally for generations, grounding community and country and belonging. Our world has been built around stories that preserve our hope and guide our future. What are religion and faith and mythology if not humanity's attempt to explain its place in the universe through narrative? Stories are the language of human understanding, but in our contemporary life, this practice has all but disappeared. I can count on one hand how many of my classmates actually enjoy English as a subject. There are even fewer people, including me, who can still find the time in a day to read a whole book for leisure. No matter how badly I want to be 11 years old again, reading Harry Potter for the first time, our society just isn't built around reading for leisure anymore. Why has this shift occurred? Well, the answer is multifaceted. It is deeply embedded within the very architecture of our modern world. our media-saturated world, we find ourselves in a digital ecosystem. An ecosystem designed for rapid consumption, for instant gratification, for the relentless fragmentation of our attention. Our constantly present phones, while offering a ton of access to information, simultaneously create a culture of superficial or fake engagement. We scroll endlessly, we skim headlines, we react to snippets, but we barely stay long enough to truly absorb. Our minds are changing because of this. There's a vast difference between me growing up in the 2010s without a phone until I was 13 and the children of now, dependent on Cocomelon. Yes, I am aware that being born in 2007 and 1997 is a vast difference in itself, but the core concern is this. The constant stream of notifications and fast-paced digital content is now eroding our ability to focus. We're consuming stories that are fake, that are shallow, made for immediate clicks instead of lasting impact. This means that we're losing something crucial, the power of literature. The rich language and deep insights found in stories are being overshadowed by a demand for what? For quick, easy fixes? In all of this digital noise, the space for reflection that reading has always provided is being lost. We live in a world that is brilliant, but broken. We're more connected than ever, yet lonelier. More informed, yet more anxious. More efficient, yet more exhausted. Where is the love of reading that was celebrated when I was in year 6? It has been taken over by the consumption of irrelevant jabber and 21st century, adequately named brain rot. So, faced with this challenge, how do we reverse this trajectory? How do we rekindle, pun intended, the love of reading, particularly among our youth, who are growing up immersed in this digital dystopia? I call it a dystopia because the beginning of every dystopian setting is characterized by the loss of intellectual growth. Sound familiar? This is a dystopia. And how do we create a future with more informed, more creative, and more critically thinking minds? I contend that the solution lies not in a rejection of technology, but in an embrace of its potential. We must have a reading medium that is not merely accessible, but irresistibly engaging, relevant, and joyful. We have to take that love of reading and inject it into something more modern, more attractive to the audience of the future. Think about the power of interactive stories, for instance. Those Choose Your Path adventures on Netflix, I'm sure you've seen one. They let you influence what happens. This idea isn't new. Writers have played with it for ages. But imagine this concept made so much more powerful by artificial intelligence. What if the very technology we blame for destroying our attention could actually help us rebuild it? What if we didn't reject the digital world, but reprogrammed it? Let's be very clear, I am not talking about AI replacing the human brain or human authors. The true magic of literature comes from a human voice, from a real perspective, and the unique experience of a living person. The heart of any story, its plot, characters, its emotional core, must always be human-made. A machine can process and mimic, but it can't truly feel the way we do, or create writing and art from that raw human impulse. But what AI can do is help make reading personal again. AI can become an incredibly powerful tool for making reading feel truly alive again. Picture a compelling story that pauses at a crucial moment. You are not given options, but an open invitation. You shape the narrative. For instance, the main character is at a crossroads. The story asks you, what move does Maryam make now, considering her past experiences? Tell us her decision and what happens next. You then use your imagination and your understanding to suggest a path. And the AI, like an editor, takes your idea, it analyzes the author's voice and the story's rules, and then creates a whole new section that perfectly fits your contribution into the narrative. Imagine taking the story into your own hands and curating an experience that is perfectly suited to your tastes. How many times have you paused a movie or closed a book in frustration thinking, why did the main character make that decision? If only it ended differently. With AI, we can give the power to shape stories into the hands of people starved for stimulation. We essentially gamify reading and make the audience an active participant in the stories they read. You're no longer a reader, you're a co-author, you're a player, and suddenly the story belongs to you. No one would ever be able to put a book down ever again. This approach fundamentally transforms reading from a passive reception of information to an active and co-creative process. It compels the reader to engage with the material, to think critically about the characters, the motivation, plot, and narrative progression in ways that static text, however brilliant, can never elicit in a distracted mind. It transforms the story into a living entity, responsive to their choices, their thoughts, their vibrant imagination. It creates space for genuine intellectual curiosity to flourish. So how do we make this happen? How do we spark that love of reading in every student, making it as exciting as their favorite game? My suggestion right here for Unity Grammar is to launch a program that allows kids to engage with reading with a new excitement. Here's how it would actually work though. Starting in our English classes, but with the potential to light up learning across every subject. Teachers and real authors would create story starters. Now these wouldn't be full novels, but kind of like story skeletons, with compelling characters, plots, themes, designed specifically for you to jump in and explore. Think of them as the perfect foundation, the human-made DNA of a story, waiting for your ideas to make it truly unique. Unity Grammar would then build a special platform powered by AI that really understands the stories. Not like how I understand AI, I don't. It knows the characters' voices, the plot's rules, and the tone of the narrative. This AI would be the engine that allows your creative input to generate new parts of the story. That is deep reading. That is real learning. And this isn't fantasy, it's possible right now. Look at what we've done with AI. We could build platforms where stories adapt to the reader's cultural background, or their reading level, even their emotional state. We could design book clubs powered by AI that match people with similar reading interests across the world. We could revolutionize literacy programs with interactive books for children who struggle with attention. But only if we remember that stories are the true soul and AI is just a tool. Because we've seen what happens when we forget. We become passive, we stop questioning, we stop imagining. We write a pre-memorized response in a standardized test and forget the passion that drove humans to creation in the first place. Instead of a boring book report, you dive into these narratives. At key moments, or when the character is challenged, you'd be able to decide for them. The hero is at a crossroads. What do they do next? Tell us their choice and what happens immediately because of it. Then the AI generates the next scene based on your thinking. You could end and invent new endings to the main story, creating a completely new or believable conclusion. When I'm sure all of you have read something and thought to yourself, well, even I could do better than that. You actually can. The AI would help guide the style, but the ideas and the writing would be completely your own. Exploring different ways that the story could end, or you might play what-if scenarios. What if this historical figure made a different decision at this critical moment? What would happen next? The AI brings your what-ifs to life, making history active and not just facts anymore. You could even create side stories, introducing a new character or an unexpected event, and the AI would help you explore how it fits into your plot. But here's the crucial part. The AI is never doing the thinking for you. Every time you interact, you follow it up with a guided discussion in class. Ask, how did your character change the story? How did your idea change the story? How well did the AI use what you suggested? What did your choices tell us about the story's main message? How does your interpretation compare to what the author might have intended? These questions show up in the HSC all the time, but this is where the magic of truly understanding literature really happens. This innovative application of AI is designed not to diminish human intellectual capacity, but to stimulate and expand it. It's about empowering students to become active architects of narratives, and not just passive consumers anymore. We want students and all readers to wrestle with the complex questions, to think about what they read beyond what is required of them by the school. The stories themselves, at their very core, remain human creations, conceived by human minds, and crafted for human hearts. The emotional resonance, the philosophical depth, the universal truths that literature explores spring from a unique experience of being a human being. A machine can process data, but it cannot truly feel or understand emotions like love or grief, hope, despair. In the way a human heart can, it can never. It cannot experience the raw and messy and beautiful process of being human. It cannot write for us because it cannot feel for us. However, why should we not use AI in a way that safeguards and enhances the potential for intellectual stimulation? For connection through stories in a world that increasingly pulls us away from these vital activities. This is about leveraging technology to empower human imagination, not to diminish it. This is not about sacrificing art. It's about saving the potential for intellectual stimulation that art provides. It's about reusing the technology to rehumanize our relationship with knowledge and storytelling. It's about reading for fun again instead of an 8-page essay on human relationships despite never having experienced one. In our schools, our homes, our communities, we need to fundamentally redesign our approach to learning and our interactions. We need to teach the youth how to think critically, how to question deeply, and how to engage with complex narratives rather than merely what to memorize. We need to prioritize intellectual integrity, the courage to sit with uncertainty, to confidently arrive at your own conclusions, even if those conclusions are unconventional or unpopular. We need to embed the understanding that creativity and the deep, immersive engagement with stories it enables is not a luxury for the artistically inclined. It's not a niche pursuit. It's core human competency. In a fundamental way, we process the world through literature. We make sense of chaos. We forge meaning. It is how we cope with adversity, how we connect with others on a deeper and more empathetic level. I'm talking to you right now through something I wrote down. This is storytelling. It's how we express dissent against injustice. But from genuine insight and original thought, this progress can be achieved. Imagine if every subject, from advanced math to physics, from business studies to engineering, ended not in a multiple choice test, but a personal reflection. How does this knowledge change how I see myself? How does it change how I see the world through the lens of a story? This is the transformative direction in which we must strive. A future where the act of reading is celebrated not just for the information it imparts, but for the personal and collective transformation it catalyzes in the human mind. We are living in a world that relentlessly values speed, productivity, and a quantifiable output. It is a world that measures worth in metrics and efficiency, reducing complex human experiences to easily digestible data points. But the future, our shared future, does not need more machines to do our thinking for us. It needs more minds that can think creatively, critically, and compassionately. Let's remember that being human was never about being efficient or being flawless. It was, and always will be, about being present. It was about the messy, glorious, unique act of living in all of its raw and unedited beauty. And perhaps the most radical, most human thing we can do in a machine-made world, a world increasingly designed for mimicry and automation, is to feel everything to its full extent, to think for ourselves, to create from our deepest selves, to be completely, unapologetically, unmistakably alive. And life, in my experience, only begins when you open one of these. In a world full of machines, I am asking you to return to the world we have built in these pages. AI should not be our energy, no, but it should be the key to unlocking those doors again. Step into those worlds, and in doing so, be truly, deeply, and vibrantly human once again. I implore you to read once again. Thank you.